People often come in here and get lost, as it were. They're in here for, I don't know how long, and I imagine maybe something happened, that they got constipated or something. But isn't that, of course, they get fascinated with these pictures. I myself, to tell you the truth, I often spend long minutes in here reviewing them all, wondering, where did I get them? Why did I put them up there? They run quite a gamut, from the Buddhas to the whores, to the maniac that made that beautiful castle up there. In a way, it's again very much like, it's a sort of voyage, I look upon it. A voyage of ideas. We're traveling not around the world, but around my bathroom, which is a little microcosm like the world, huh? That's one of the beauties about it, that it can take you anywhere. If you let your mind roam, as we say, one thing leads to another. If you sit here and you're relaxed, why, you're free to make free associations. Now, for instance, is really, I think, one of the things that are the most magical to me in this whole room, that Neuschwanstein castle by the mad Ludwig of Bavaria. He was truly a mad architectural poet, and that is his greatest piece of work. Well, he ruined the state of Bavaria, the kingdom, by the expenditures on his castles. To me, it's a magic castle. The outside and the inside, all marvelous. Yeah. Then there, of course, is that crazy man, Tanizaki, one of my favorites, Japan's dean of literature. Delightful old man who loved life, women, song, drink and everything. And his books are about love and often very perverse aspects of love. He wrote a book, among many, by the way, which is called The Key, and they made a film of it. Very interesting story about a middle-aged couple who each keeps a diary, and each somehow wants the other to read the other's diary. They arrange so that they discreetly leave a key somewhere that the other can find and read. It begins with the fact that the man, a middle-aged man, thinks that he is becoming impotent, and his doctor recommends that he finds some young man to fall in love with his wife, which will make him jealous and therefore increase his ardor, do you see? And all this does happen. But what's interesting is that each one records the experience, you see, that they had, and especially, let's say, the experience with each other in sleeping together. Because one of the complaints of the old man is, he's not so old, by the way, is that his wife is too passionate and at the same time too puritanical. He has never seen her below the waist. He doesn't know what she looks like. And that's his supreme desire. That, and say, to touch her toes and kiss her toes even. Well, to achieve this, he resorts to a strategy of getting her drunk. It appears that she likes cognac, which I found really remarkable, Japanese liking cognac, especially a bourgeois woman. But she does. So they fill her glass over and over until she gets drunk. Then it's her habit to go upstairs and take a very hot bath. And then she puts it on so hot, the water, that she looks like a boiled salmon, and is on point of fainting also. They catch her several times asleep or semi-unconscious. When they put her to bed, she's not really fainting, she's not really asleep, she's pretending. And she's doing this so that her husband may take liberties with her, do you see? And what liberty? He's somewhat of a maniac, sex maniac. In addition to viewing her, and he moves her about in bed in every position, he gets a camera and he takes pictures of her. And while he's doing this, his 20-year-old daughter is looking through the keyhole at him doing this to her mother. You see? So it's a fantastic yarn. And unfortunately, in Cannes, where I saw the film and I was a judge, they eliminated it in favor of La Dolce Vita. I was the only one who stuck up for this film. Here's another picture of Hoki, my fifth and last wife. A few years ago, she came to America, where I met her singing and playing the piano at the Imperial Gardens restaurant. I think now she's finished with her life as an entertainer. You see this man, Japanese, famous actor and writer, Toniyama-san. He's at the Imperial Gardens with me, sitting in front of the piano and Hoki playing, you know, and Hoki can hear everything he says. Suddenly he says to me, "Tell me, Mr. Miller, how many women do you think you have slept with in your life?" I was, of course, embarrassed, you know, and also puzzled, and I said, "Well, I've never thought about that." "Well," I said, "maybe 40 or 50. "What?" he says, "I've slept myself with maybe 250, you know, and you, with your reputation, you must have had 1,000, you know." All this in front of Hoki-san, who is straining to hear every word.
Who is that over there, Bing Crosby?
You mean this guy? Bing Crosby, farthest from the world. That's my great idol as a writer, Blaise Cendrars, the French writer, the man that I really adore, and whom, like Knut Hamsun, when 60 years ago I wanted to imitate Knut Hamsun. If today I could imitate Blaise Cendrars, I would do it with a whole full heart. This is the man I really venerate as a writer. He had his right arm cut off in the First World War. Just before the war, he was an organist, and Cendrars was a juggler on that stage with Charlie Chaplin. Imagine it. Of course, during the war, the Second World War, he gave up writing. For 3 years, he wouldn't write a line. He lost, I think, 2 sons in the war as air pilots. Then one night, a friend visited him, and as a result of that meeting, he sat down and he wrote about 6 novels, and the most wonderful novels you can imagine. Naturally, he had to type with one hand. Very, very slow work. And his novels are big novels, long ones. Right next to him is the most wonderful painter of all, Hieronymus Bosch. His is the most unknown, mysterious life. His paintings likewise. They are absolutely unique, and forerunner, of course, of the surrealist paintings. You know, the strangest thing is when I go up in an airplane, what happens to me? I'm slightly deaf, you know, but up in the plane, I hear perfectly, and I not only hear imaginary symphonic music coming from God knows where, but I hear celestial music too, what you call the music of the spheres. I hear it, it's as clear and beautiful, and I can't describe it either, because it's like no other music that I ever heard. And it comes to me, you know, like over the ether waves. And I ask pilots I had, "Do you hear that too?" They said, "Yes, they do," and they're absolutely mystified. Tom, over here in this corner, I have a couple of photos that I put up here expressly for people who want to be shocked. There are people who already heard a great deal about the walls in this bathroom, and they imagine all sorts of things. If you notice, if you look around, there's nothing really very obscene on the walls. They're largely curiosities. But I put these expressly for those people, what you call them, who are looking always for dirty stuff, do you know? Here's a wonderful Zen story. It's about a monk called Roshi Bobo, which in English means master of fuck. Now the title shouldn't throw anyone and may not mean exactly what people think, but there's one thing you can say about the master of fuck, that this fuck is an extraordinary one like none that ever was before. The whole story concerns a young man, 15 years of age, whose parents sent him to a Zen monastery to become a monk and, of course, to receive enlightenment. He was a fairly bright young man, good-looking, obedient, and as far as anyone could see, good material. But after a few years, nothing seemed to happen. He didn't seem to be getting anywhere. 5 years passed, nothing. 10, and even his masters began to despair of him. Finally, after 15 years, he decided that he didn't have it in him. He didn't have what it takes, and he would go out and enjoy earthly life, you know, be a man of the world if he couldn't be a monk. So he slipped out one night with his bag and baggage, and he wandered into the red light district. And there he encountered a girl, seemed to him like a geisha, and he went to bed with her immediately. Well, it was his first experience with a woman, and instead of being awkward, though, and embarrassed and shy and so on, he seemed to be very adept. His senses were highly attuned from his Zen training. He was aware of her body, the touch, the smell, and everything. Even when the clothes dropped to the floor, created a sensation in him. So, in the midst of this marvelous experience, he suddenly has what he couldn't get in the monastery, the experience of satori. He saw things as they are and were and always will be, once and forever, clearly, you know, which is really what enlightenment is all about, don't you know? The important thing was that he had allowed himself to go to the very end of doubt and despair. Had he not, you see, this would never have happened. But he went to the very end of the tunnel and saw the light. And this is, of course, something that does not happen to people in psychoanalysis. They may be adapted to our corrupt world when they're finished, but they never reach satori, do you see? And they never see things as they really are, in my opinion. And of course, there's another aspect to it, and a very wonderful one. It is like William Blake's idea of reaching heaven through hell. It doesn't matter what road you take to reach paradise. And beside that even, one might say that paradise is not even just around the corner, but right under your nose, if you happen to be lucky and aware enough, you know. And I think that's the great burden of it, that one should, how shall I say, accept his doubts completely, as the Buddha once advised, you know. Accept despair and anguish and frustration and see it through. Don't go to a doctor. Don't go to an analyst, above all. By the way, up there is one of my favorite men, you know, here, Hermann Hesse. When I look at him here, It reminds me of Goldmund or Narcissus, which is almost the two sides of himself. You know, the monkish one and the artist. And as you remember in that book, he makes the monk confess to the artist that he is the better one, that his was a greater life, a more meaningful life. You know, which is very interesting because the artist led a sort of a wild, profligate life of adventure, you know, women and everything. And the monk is austere and righteous and so on. And Hess makes the monk say to him, you know, yours was after all the better one. And even meaning the more spiritual one too. I don't know if you have noticed that most writers don't look so hot. Writers are alone too much with their thoughts, you know, and they are bent over, they're weazened, and they're thin-blooded, and they're living in an abstract realm all the time of ideas, whereas the painter is plastic, you know, and the musician, of course, is living, well, this is not true, but you would think he's living an angelic life. He's up there with the birds. Right under that is a very strange thing. This is chiseled into a stone, and this is done by Jung, the great psychoanalyst. In a few words, what this represents is the whole of his philosophy, Jung's philosophy, in these symbols. It's very, very strange and very interesting, but I can't make any of it out, you know, except like astrological symbols. But what the rest is, it could be Hebrew or Egyptian. There's another very strange, very interesting one, the very opposite maybe of Jung's. This comes from some very ancient Chinese book of poetry, and it's supposed to be absolutely inscrutable. I've had the Chinese in here looking at it, and they've given me all sorts of interpretations. You see, some say that it's probably a Taoist saying, you know. Others say no, that it has to do with legends months before the Tao, you know, and Lao Tse, what's his name? I was going to say Mao Tse-tung. Then, of course, other people have said, why, shit, it's nothing but a commercial advertisement, you know, maybe for coffee or tea or rice or something like that. But every Chinese who's been in here has given me a different interpretation of this thing. It's weird. There's a photo from a German newspaper showing the girls in the Tropic of Cancer film. Everyone was a beauty. Perhaps the main, most interesting thing about that film was that they were shown in the nude, a good frontal view, you see. And the caption underneath says, in German, ohne Eros sind wir alle Nullen, meaning without love, we're nothing. But of course the Tropic of Cancer wasn't very much about love. Before committing suicide, General Nogi's wife wrote a letter to her niece who was about to get married, and it was as if she were giving her a prescription for a happy marriage. And having read that thing, I myself believe that it's the most wonderful prescription. Well, it went into many details, largely how the wife should behave toward the husband at all times. And it even went into details about the bed, about intercourse. For instance, how she should not act too passionately and unrestrainedly, abandonedly, because then it would be acting like a whore. Although between you and me, you know damn well whores don't go that way. And then she said, and when you were through, of course, you get the warm towel for your husband and you wipe him carefully, gently. And as for yourself, you know, they use a sort of a paper towel, the Japanese. She said, now when you wipe yourself, be very careful that it doesn't crackle so as to disturb your husband's equanimity, you know. Very wonderful touch. In what country would they ever think of such a thing, huh? This man Gurdjieff, I think that of all the masters I've read about, I really think that Gurdjieff stands out as the most interesting to me. And as you know, he didn't want to be called a master. And that's why he led for 21 years what was called a blameworthy life instead of a praiseworthy life. He didn't want people to venerate him or bow down to him as a great master. A very great enigma, and it's absolutely true. What the hell? Well, nobody seems to have a clear idea what this man stood for. Gurdjieff had come close to losing his life once in an automobile accident in France. And he was unconscious, lay on the road for several hours, I guess, before he was picked up by a gendarme. And it was really thanks to the gendarme that his life was saved. He waits about 3 years before ever rendering thanks to the gendarme. Then he tells him to come to Fontainebleau. He wants to honor him with a banquet for having saved his life. Well, the gendarme had forgotten all about it long ago. Anyhow, he did come, and he was not a drinking man. He drank his little glass of wine with dinner, but no alcohol. And Gurdjieff, as you know, loved Armagnac. He loved old strong liquors, and he could drink like a fish. So he kept saying to the gendarme, now please, this Armagnac won't hurt you, and it's in honor of you. We simply want to toast you. Take it. And the gendarme shakes it, no, I can't do it. I can't drink it. And Gurdjieff said, now look. And he calls the young boy who wrote that book about him, Fritz Peters, who was then 13 years old. Now he says, watch, I'm going to give him a glass of Armagnac to drink, and you'll see, nothing will happen to him. And he fills a bumper glass of Armagnac, hands it to the boy, who obediently gulps the whole thing down at once. A powerful administration. Well, the boy is really out on his feet. He's serving the table, but he's skating around. He doesn't know what he's doing, but he's doing everything properly, automatically. It's only 5 hours later, when he goes to bed, that he knows he's dead drunk. And then he vomits, and is sick and falls over the bed. That's the sort of thing that Gurdjieff could do, huh? I suppose that here is where people linger maybe the longest, especially women, I think. I don't know why. This fellow in the center is a really phenomenal friend of mine named Florian Steiner. Well, he's a bit, like myself maybe, obsessed with sex. And here he's got his friends lined up with their asses exposed, and he himself grinning at us in his very familiar smile. It's wonderful. And of course this is his little nephew, photographed when Sexes first came out. Everybody loves it. This is my good friend Emil White in Big Sur. Now here arrives one day a school teacher who's a virgin, and he fell in love with her, I believe. And so he got her, surprisingly enough, to pose for this. People always say, is it real or is that a statue? You could take it for a statue, couldn't you? But the wonderful thing is the expression on his face. He doesn't look like a man who's holding a naked woman, does he? He looks sorrowful there and meditative, reflective, as though he was far away from her and her rich backside there, huh? It's a wonderful trio. But there's one here, Tom, too, that I want to tell you a little about. I am very fascinated by these two. This is a Chinese actress, I forget her name, a young woman. And that's a Japanese entertaining girls in a bar, maybe. But if you notice, both have the full face, full cheeks, and very luscious, big lips. The lips that you want to bite when you see. And I think on this girl, the expression in her eyes is beautiful. It's something melancholy there. Very good, very good. Yeah. So that's the kind of babies you have here, huh? Very good. All in one piece, too, huh? Yeah. You may have noticed that I have a number of photos of the Buddha from various countries, by the way. Cambodia, Siam, Burma, I think. I don't know where these all come from. But at any rate, I've all my life been fascinated by the Buddha, the story of his life, and this smile, this seraphic or beatific smile that you see always on the Buddha. It's an inscrutable smile, but it always denotes a great inner peace. You may notice the absence of something here. I have no religious iconography, as it were, from the Christian world. Though they talk about peace a great deal, the Christians, you see, to me they don't exemplify it. And even Jesus, I mean, the representations we have of Jesus don't inspire me with this same feeling of fulfillment, inner security and inner peace and radiance that the Buddhas always emanate. For some reason, I'm fascinated with this Gauguin. This is the early Gauguin. It's a beautiful tonality throughout and a very wonderful expression, too, on his face. Yes. Up here probably is Gauguin's most famous painting, a triptych, I believe. And what fascinates me about it, particularly, are the words that he inscribed at the top of the canvas. Where do we come from? Who are we? And where are we going? Eternal questions never answered, unanswerable. Now, it may seem trivial, perhaps, to say that in some way this connects up in my life with this matter of identity. I seem like I have all my five senses, and I'm not dotty yet, even though I'm 81. But throughout my life, and especially in my dream life, I'm harassed by this question of identity. Who am I? Often I don't know where am I. Probably I never ask where I'm going. But I think the first time it happened, or one of the times, when I was in my early 20s, I was on an elevated station in Brooklyn. I was going to get a bit of Wrigley's gum out of the slot machine. And as you know, there's a little mirror there that you look into as you push the button. As I did that, put the money in, pushed the button, I'm looking at it, and it's another face. I was hallucinated. And I looked again, still that same strange, mysterious face. Now, fortunately, I was on my way to a burlesque show. And when I got down in the street and I entered the theater, why, it had all disappeared. But this recurs to me more vividly, more strongly in dreams. I have veritable nightmares, frequently. And it's always the same theme. It's that I was shaving, perhaps. I looked in the mirror. It's another face. I go crazy. I'm in the insane asylum, and I'm in there an interminable length of time. I don't know what is happening. I don't know who I am, that especially. And I'm just a nut like all the others. Finally, I escape. It's a heroic job to escape, to get over the walls. And then when I get over, I breathe a sigh of relief. I think everything's fine. I see a couple coming down the street, and I wave, and I begin to talk to them, and they look at me, and it's obvious they don't know what language I'm speaking. So I'm still mad. Then I wake up, usually. Now I know. Now I know where I am and who I am. back in that old shithole, New York, where I was born. A place where I knew nothing but starvation, humiliation, despair, frustration, every goddamn thing. Nothing but misery. Every bloody street I look down, I see nothing but misery, nothing but monsters. Of course, this was the New York that I knew when I was being born, or rather, I didn't know it yet. Later, when I begin to explore it, why, it's a different city, a little more horrible. It gets worse all the time. Today, I think it's the ugliest, filthiest, shittiest city in the world. When I was a kid, there was hardly anything that we have today. No telephone, no automobiles, no nothing, really. It was rather quaint. There was color even in the buildings. But as time went on, why, it got more horrible to me. When I think of the Brooklyn Bridge, which was the only bridge then in existence, how many times I walked over that bridge on an empty stomach, back and forth, looking for a handout, never getting anything, selling newspapers at Times Square, begging on Broadway, coming home with a dime maybe. It's no wonder that I had these goddamn recurrent nightmares all my life. I don't know how I ever survived, why I'm still sane. In fact, I don't know now whether I'm really awake or dreaming. My whole past seems like one long dream, punctured with nightmares.